Hey everybody, welcome back to another Sam IT. I'm Scott Allen Miller. Today, we're going to talk about the practicality of why SMBs need hardware RAID. Now, we talk a lot about different RAID scenarios, and we talk about why software RAID may be superior to hardware RAID in a lot of ways, why hardware RAID might be better in some other ways, and we talk about lots of different RAID levels and lots of things, and fake RAID and why that's a problem, and avoid a hybrid RAID, and blah, blah, blah. But there's something that I think is often missed, and it's worth pointing out because it's pretty important, especially to our decision making, and that is in the small and medium business market, all of that pretty much doesn't matter, and what does matter is that SMBs actually just need hardware RAID. There's a couple reasons for this from a technical level, and that is, one, a lot of SMBs use VMware ESXi. VMware ESXi requires hardware RAID. Period. End of story. That's it. So if you're going to use ESXi, you have to have hardware RAID. If you're using Hyper-V, also a very popular option, you need hardware RAID. There is no enterprise software RAID option with Hyper-V. There are software RAID options, mostly around fake RAID or around Windows software RAID, which is not considered production ready and has not been for 20 years. It is the primary driver for why hardware RAID exists today. So if you're on Hyper-V, while you could be convinced possibly that there's another option, there really isn't. If you're going to go into a production environment, you need to have hardware RAID. So those two things, which are the majority of the SMB market, or where they should be, simply require hardware RAID, and that makes things really easy. If you're using Citrix XenServer, which is a pretty niche scenario, it technically doesn't need hardware RAID, but officially, according to Citrix, it's the only thing they support. So that kind of lends to everything else. If you're on the other options, straight Xen or KVM, or for some reason running something that isn't one of those hypervisors, first of all, if you are, step back, that's another decision that needs to be revisited. But if you happen to be running straight Xen or KVM, you do have access to enterprise software RAID options. But if you're an SMB, you should probably not be running them. Why? SMBs need blind swap almost universally for a couple reasons. One, the kind of hardware that they use generally comes with it. You're often paying for it anyway. And when it doesn't, people expect it to be there. This can lead to confusion because SMBs often need to lean on vendors, or lean on suppliers, or lean on outside help, and they tend to turn over their staff pretty frequently compared to the enterprise, with very little tribal knowledge being passed on from person to person. And when we remove hardware RAID, we start to introduce confusion because most people in those circumstances are used to environments where they have hardware RAID with both hot and blind swap capabilities, and they expect their systems to work that way so that they can simply pass things off to the data center, have them grab drives, pull it out, plug it back in, and not have to interact with a systems administrator. If you use software RAID, you need to have a systems administrator who's going to handle those things, and that's confusing and unusual for the SMB market, leading to dangerous situations. Even if you are a highly competent systems administrator, you know your system really well, you know exactly how to use your software RAID, that may be absolutely no problem for you whatsoever. But what happens when you're on vacation, or you move on to another job, or you need someone else to be a remote hands for you, or something happens and someone doesn't contact you and they try to take care of it themselves? All those things are dangerous scenarios, and they're all things very likely to happen. And so that's why you don't want to go down that path. It doesn't mean that you can't handle it. It's that the ecosystem that you have to be a part of isn't prepared for it. Also, SMBs very often need to go to things like co-location simply because they're good business practice in the SMB space. When they do so, that team as well is used to blind swap. One, it makes it easy. So even if you had a team that very clearly understood that it was software RAID and they couldn't do blind swap, it's a lot of unnecessary coordination between teams and organizations to do a simple hard drive replacement. But in other cases, if that team is not well versed or doesn't remember which equipment is which, they may accidentally cause damage or cause problems because they tried to do blind swap when you weren't prepared for it. So there's lots of different reasons, and they all come together, and there will always be exceptions. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but it's a pretty general one. If you are in the SMB market, which the majority of people watching this video are, don't even realistically consider software RAID. It's not that you can't make it good. It's not that it might not be better at a purely technical level. It's that in reality, for the needs of your business and what it has to support both today and into the future, and to have the options that it needs and the flexibility, hardware RAID is where you need to be. This should take a really difficult decision of evaluating a lot of different things and make it pretty basic. If it's worth having a server, it's worth running it well, you need to protect your data, you have to have RAID, you need that RAID to be reliable, and a good enterprise RAID controller is simply a part of that. It's not that big of an expense for any company, and you can easily afford one at home. It may not be the cheapest thing that you ever buy, but it's not something that's out of the reach of any company that actually wants to protect its data and systems. So to make that decision simple, err on the side of hardware. Don't realistically consider software RAID unless you have an extremely special circumstance where you can justify an investment in both building and protecting that system in a way that dramatically outstrips the very small cost of hardware RAID. Thanks for joining me. Remember to put your comments below. Let's talk about why you may want to use software RAID or hardware RAID in your small business. Remember to like and subscribe. Give us that thumbs up. And as always, there'll be a link below to Patreon where your contributions can go a long way in helping support our educational efforts here so that we can bring more videos like this to you in the future. Talkadillo is a cloud-hosted or fully managed on-premises IP PBX platform providing businesses with simple and simply affordable voice communications. Visit Talkadillo.com and learn more about how Talkadillo can change how you view your telephones and help to support SAM IT.